This is the sound of a 21-year-old college student having a complete mental breakdown. He's locked inside a fake prison in the basement of Stanford University. For 50 years, this exact moment has been used to prove a terrifying idea. Give an ordinary person a uniform and absolute power, and they will instantly turn into a sadistic monster. It's called the Stanford Prison Experiment. You've probably heard of it. But there is a huge problem. The screaming you just heard, he was faking it. And those sadistic guards, they didn't turn evil naturally. They were following a script. The most famous psychological experiment in history wasn't an experiment at all. It was a staged play. But here is the crazy part. Even though the setup was a lie, what it actually proved about the dark side of human nature is happening right now. Not in a prison, but in your office, in your relationships, everywhere. Let me explain. To understand what happened in that basement, you have to understand America in 1971. Vietnam. Every night the TV shows body bags and helicopters. Trust in authority is hitting rock bottom. Students are protesting across the country. The year before, the National Guard opened fire on students at Kent State. 4 dead, 9 wounded. No one was punished. In prisons, a separate war. Weeks after Zimbardo's experiment, inmates at Attica Prison in New York would take hostages, demanding basic human rights, medical care, the right to shower, an end to beatings. Governor Rockefeller refused to negotiate and ordered the National Guard to storm the facility. Dozens were killed, guards and prisoners alike. America is asking itself a question it can't look away from. How do normal people become part of a machine of violence? How does a kid raised on baseball and apple pie burn down a village? Philip Zimbardo decides to test this, not in a real prison, not in a war zone, in a university basement, using ordinary college students. His hypothesis is provocative. Evil isn't a personality trait. It's a feature of the situation. Put a good apple in a bad barrel, and the barrel will rot the apple. They screen 24 volunteers, all healthy, mentally stable, middle-class guys with no criminal records. A coin toss decides their fate, guard or prisoner. The prisoners are arrested by real local police at their homes, handcuffed, fingerprinted, blindfolded, and taken to the prison. Strip-searched, given a smock, a number instead of a name, and a chain around their ankle. The guards get a uniform, a club, and mirrored sunglasses to hide their eyes and erase their individuality. Day 1 is boring. The guards feel awkward. Zimbardo later admitted he thought the experiment was a failure. But Day 2 changes everything. The prisoners rebel. They barricade their doors and rip off their numbers. And this is the turning point. Not because the rebellion was scary, but because the guards had to react. And they did. They crushed the rebellion with fire extinguishers. They threw the ringleaders into solitary confinement. From that moment, the dynamic was permanently altered. And this is where we usually say, power corrupts. But that's a lazy explanation. The problem wasn't that the guards magically turned evil. The problem was that they were put into a system without clear boundaries. When you look closely, you see the psychology breaking down into 3 distinct mechanisms. Mechanism 1. The power of the role. If you give someone a role, they don't just play it. Their brain searches for what that role is supposed to look like. The guards weren't explicitly told to be sadistic, but in their minds, guard equals control, guard equals discipline, so they filled in the blanks. Mechanism 2. The diffusion of responsibility. No one feels like a villain. A guard making a kid clean a toilet barehanded doesn't think, I am a bad person. He thinks, I'm just doing my job. The system requires this. The responsibility dissolves. Mechanism 3. The shifting baseline. It didn't happen overnight. Day 1 was basic commands. Day 2 was punishment. By day 4, making prisoners do push-ups on top of each other felt completely normal. Every step is just slightly worse than the last, so you never pinpoint the exact moment it went crazy. But the darkest part of the experiment wasn't what happened to the guards. It was what happened to the prisoners. They started to adapt. Prisoner 819 broke down crying. He kept repeating, I'm a bad prisoner. 819 is a bad prisoner. Not, I want to go home. Not, I feel sick. He was talking about himself, in the third person, through a number. Zimbardo had to go in and say, listen, you are not 819. You are your name. I am Dr. Zimbardo. This is an experiment. Let's leave. The kid stopped crying, looked up like he just woke up from a nightmare, and said, okay, let's go. 6 days. That's all it took for a human being to forget his own name. But here is the second half of the story, the part they don't put in the textbooks. In 2018, a French historian named Thibault Texier published a book that blew the lid off the entire Stanford experiment. He dug into the university archives, listened to the unedited audio tapes, and interviewed the participants. His findings changed everything. The guards didn't just naturally get aggressive because of the situation, they were coached. Before the experiment even started, Zimbardo and his assistants gave the guards specific instructions on how to dehumanize the prisoners. During the experiment, researchers actually scolded guards who were being too soft. One of the worst guards, nicknamed John Wayne, later admitted he treated the whole thing as an acting improv exercise. He was literally copying a sadistic warden he saw in the movie Cool Hand Luke. And what about Douglas Corpy, the prisoner who had the famous screaming breakdown that became the symbol of the experiment? He was faking it. He later confessed he just wanted to leave so he could study for his grad school exams. When he asked for his books, they said no, so he faked a hysterical breakdown to get released. And it worked. But here is the most crucial detail. The prisoners couldn't just leave. Even though they were volunteers, Zimbardo's team made them believe they could only leave for medical reasons. This completely changes the narrative. This wasn't the power of the situation magically turning good men into sadists. This was people obeying an authority figure, a professor in a lab coat who gave them permission to be cruel and trapped them in a basement. You might think, well, this is an extreme case. This is about prisons and war. 2003, Iraq. Photos leaked from the Abu Ghraib prison showing American soldiers abusing Iraqi detainees, putting bags over their heads, stripping them, humiliating them, smiling for the camera. Zimbardo looked at those photos and said, look, It's my basement. It's the system, not the soldiers. But critics pointed out an uncomfortable truth. Not everyone at Abu Ghraib did those things. Thousands of soldiers worked the same night shifts in the same chaotic conditions and didn't torture anybody. The situation didn't create monsters. It just gave a green light to the people who were already willing to cross the line. But let's bring this even closer to home. Forget prisons. Picture a modern open-plan office. Glass, bright lights, free coffee. A manager looks at a report and says, "Rewrite this." The employee nods. He's rewriting it for the third time. The rules keep changing. The feedback depends on the boss's mood. So the employee starts working later, checking emails at 2 a.m., apologizing for things out of his control. Slowly, he stops asking questions. Not because he agrees, but because the system is unpredictable and it's just safer to keep your head down. The manager doesn't think he's cruel, he's just demanding. The employee doesn't think he's a victim, he just needs to try harder. This isn't a psychology experiment anymore. This is Tuesday. The Stanford experiment happens every day, when rules are vague and authority is unchecked. People don't fight the system. They try to look good inside it. The real tragedy of the Stanford Prison Experiment wasn't that the guards crossed the line. It was that the guy running it became part of the very thing he was studying. Philip Zimbardo didn't act like a scientist. He acted like a warden. He put on the mirrored sunglasses. When he heard a rumor about a prisoner escape, he didn't write it down as interesting data. He called the real local police for backup. He got totally lost in the system he created. And over the course of 6 days, more than 50 outsiders walked through that basement. Colleagues, parents of the prisoners, a priest. 50 people saw kids in chains, sleep-deprived, walking around with paper bags over their head, and they all just accepted it. Until August 1971, when a young psychologist named Christina Maslach walked down the stairs. She had just finished her PhD and came to do some routine interviews with the subjects. Instead, she saw a hallway of exhausted men being marched to the toilet by a 20-year-old kid in khaki shouting orders. Maslach felt sick to her stomach. She looked away. Her colleagues noticed and laughed at her. "What's wrong with you? Relax. It's just the experiment." But later that night, in the parking lot, she completely lost it. She started screaming at the man who orchestrated the whole thing, Philip Zimbardo, who also happened to be the man she was dating. She was crying. She told him, "What you are doing to those boys is terrible. If this is the real you, I don't think I want anything to do with you." The very next morning, the experiment was shut down. Philip Zimbardo passed away in October 2024, at the age of 91. Right by his side was Christina Maslach. After that fight in the parking lot, they stayed together. They were married for over 50 years. She didn't stop that experiment because she was a better psychologist than everyone else, or because she was braver. She stopped it because she was the last one to arrive. She saw with fresh eyes what everyone else had already slowly accepted as normal. Maybe the question isn't, what makes good people turn evil? Maybe the real question is, what makes good people stay silent when evil is happening right in front of them? Because sometimes, the most important person in the room is the one who just walked in.